Hello, today we're reading the story of Beth, the story of a child convict, written by Mark Wilson. Now, this is the story of a little girl who stole something. It wasn't a huge crime, but the time was definitely huge. And it tells us the story of what happened in the transportation of convicts from England to Australia in early colonial days. Thank goodness it's not something that still happens now. So let's read on. How could it come to this? All I did was steal a dress and a bonnet. The magistrate sentenced me to transportation, and the bailiffs put me on chains on a ship called the Lady Penrhyn. During the voyage, I met Molly. She told me she wasn't a convict, but her mother was, and had died of a fever just a week after we set sail. Molly's eyes were full of tears, and she looked so scared, so I gave her my little rag doll, the only thing I owned. That was just over 3 months ago, and now here we are in this strange land. Today, when we came ashore, the sky lit up with flashes of lightning as a fierce storm swept over us. I was so frightened as the marine ordered us over the side of the swaying ship, but I had to put my fear aside so I could help Molly. Neither of us dared to look down until we stepped onto the longboat below. When the boat approached the shore, Molly pointed to a group of natives standing at the tree line. "Do you think they'll hurt us?" "I don't think so, Molly," I said, but I was just as worried as she was. "Get over the side, you lot," growled the marine as the longboat slid into shore. I helped Molly down to the sand and realized how good it felt to be on dry land again, even in this strange new place. We were met by Mr. Brady, the surgeon from our ship, who told us we were to be his servants. He told us to carry his belongings to the hospital at the end of the beach. Once he had unpacked the hospital, he told us our duties were to help with the cooking and to get a garden started to grow some fresh vegetables. Mr. Brady sat down in the shade of a tree. When we went to collect firewood, I saw him open his journal and he began to write. And he said on the 6th of February, 1788, "Now that some tents have been put up for them, all the women and children have come ashore. Some of them still have to sleep outside. They came here with only the clothes they are wearing, as somehow all the women's belongings were left on the wharf back in England. I have a convict child, Beth, and a young orphan girl, Molly, helping me now. I have put them to work clearing the rocks from around the hospital tent and fetching wood for the cooking fire. The natives are not coming close, but keep watching us. Governor Phillip wants us all to be kind to them." It's been months now since we arrived, and my hands are cut and bleeding from digging out rocks from the ground. Molly has splinters from collecting wood for the fires. After work today, we walked up the hill behind the hospital. I smiled as Molly rolled and tumbled in the long grass. It was the very first time that I had heard her laugh. The natives have been coming to the forest behind the hospital lately. Molly waved to one of them, who waved back, and I thought that one day we might be able to be friends with them. I saw Mr. Brady writing in his journal again tonight. This initially seemed an ideal place for a settlement. The soil seemed good for growing crops, but on closer inspection is nothing more than thick black sand. The trees are not good for timber, and the ground is covered in enormous black and red ants. Some natives came near us this morning, and they brought some wild berries. They carry long spears, which they use to catch fish. We managed to swap a looking glass for the berries, two fish, and a war club. My servants, Beth and Molly, are still sleeping outside at night, as the tents are all full. Molly complained that a rat ran across her legs last night. Now, I'm sorry I have to look at this when I'm reading it because it takes a lot to read it because it's in cursive. Molly and I have been ordered to help dig a garden bed to plant vegetables. Many of the other convicts are doing the same. Everyone in the colony will share what we can grow because the food brought from England won't last very long. Each of us gets a certain amount of food called rations, which have to last all week. The women and children get less food than the men, which I don't think is fair, as we do as much work as the male convicts. And it says here that the food rations for the Marines and convicts each week: beef 7 pounds or pork 4 pounds, dried peas 3 pints, bread or flour 7 pounds, butter 6 ounces, flour 1 pound, or rice half a pound. Female convicts and children and Marine wives will receive 2/3 of the male convict ration. It is now many weeks since we planted the vegetables, but nothing has grown. Our rations have now been made even smaller to make the food last through the winter. The good news is that we now sleep in one of the women's tents, so at least we are dry at night. Molly talked about her ma last night. She was beautiful, Molly told me. She brushed my hair every night and told me that one day we wouldn't be poor anymore. Tears welled up as Molly told me. The very last thing Ma said to me was, "Please don't forget me, little angel." I hugged Molly tight and I said, "I promise I will remember her too, just as if she was my ma." This afternoon we stood silently and watched as the last 2 convict ships sailed out of the bay. Our last hope of returning to England was gone. I saw Mr. Brady writing in his journal after the ships left. The vegetable crops have failed. There is some panic that the rest of the food will run out soon. We are not able to catch enough fish or animals to feed everyone. We arrived here with over 500 cows, sheep, horses, pigs, geese and chickens, most of which have died or wandered off into the bush. Governor Phillip has sent HMS Sirius back to the Cape of Good Hope for food, but the journey will take 6 months or more. There has been trouble between the convicts and the natives lately. It is getting serious. Governor Phillips wants the problem resolved. The winter winds and rain have now given way to warm days and sunshine. Wildflowers are growing around the bay and brightly coloured birds flitter everywhere. There is not enough food for everyone, so I've been ordered to collect mussels from the bay each day, and Molly has to collect berries in the forest. When she does, she feels the natives are watching, even though she can't see them. It's Christmas Day now. No one is celebrating because there is hardly any food to eat. After Christmas, the Marines made us work harder, even harder in the summer heat. But the weather is finally starting to cool down. A few days ago, when we went to bed, I noticed that Molly was a bit restless. She began to cry, and I held her tight until the dawn. Sunlight shone through the flap of the tent. I made Molly stay in the tent when I went to work each morning. There are now so many sick with dysentery and scurvy that there is no place to put them all. The lack of fresh fruit and vegetables means that this outbreak of scurvy will only get worse. I have been giving many of the sick some of the local berries, or sarsaparilla vine leaf boiled in water, which the natives use. It seems to help, but there is just not enough of it to treat everyone. To add to our problem, there has recently been an outbreak of smallpox, mainly amongst the natives. Many have died, and we are treating others behind the hospital. The outlook for them is rather grim, I am afraid. After work today, I hurried home through the rain and found Molly curled up on the bed crying. Her breathing was short and fast, and there were dark blotches on her skin. Help me, I yelled to anyone who could hear, but no one came. I put my arms around Molly and struggled up the hill to the hospital with her. When I got there, the surgeon looked at Molly and said there was nothing he could do for her. He told me to put her on the ground outside the tent. He gave me some berries for Molly, but she was so weak she couldn't swallow, and she just lay there with tears in her eyes. I gently stroked her forehead and told her the story she had told me that night in the tent. It was about the story about her ma and how she loved her. Molly gave me a sad little smile, hugged the rag doll between us, and closed her eyes. And through my tears, I whispered, I will never forget you, my little angel. I stood on the headland and watched as the HMS Sirius sailed back into Sydney Cove. It would have food and medicine on board, and everyone was waving and cheering as they ran down to the dock to meet it. I didn't cheer or wave. I just wiped the tears from my eyes as I thought of little Molly laughing and tumbling through the long grass on the hill. And here's the afterward, and it's the author's notes. So it was a miracle that so many convicts survived the terrible journey from England. But on arrival at Sydney Cove, they faced hardships they never dreamed of. Many died from either disease or starvation. No one really knows how smallpox came to the colony, but it was a disease that killed many, mainly Aboriginal people. Scurvy, however, was a disease caused from a lack of fresh fruit and vegetables. It was 2 years before the first crops were successful, and the triumph of the high human spirit that the little colony at last prevailed. Elizabeth Hayward, the inspiration for this story, was the youngest female convict with the First Fleet. She was strong-willed, resilient, and managed to survive those first precarious years at Sydney Cove. She had several children and eventually settled in Van Diemen's Land, now Tasmania, and Elizabeth lived to be 63 years old. So, this is the story Beth, based on a true story, and the story of a child convict. I hope you've really enjoyed this story. It was long, it's historical, it's factual, and I think we never should forget the price that people paid, whether they wanted to or not, to come to this new country. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed this story. Bye bye.